Got the you're on live now, Mark. Well, it's
Right on.
not technically live, I suppose, but it's technically live now. So this is
It's live enough.
it's live enough, and the boys we don't edit. And as I've gotten more into the podcast, I've realized it's just more so if we don't really know how to edit. So it's not something that it's like, hey, we're doing all authentic. It's more so if we just don't know the whole system and we haven't looked that much into it. So let's just to be clear there, whatever happens, happens.
The
But
lack of technical know-how. Too much brawn, not enough technical abilities. I
yeah,
get it.
yeah, it's
I'm the
just
same.
we're just falling behind our crutches, we're just so no. Anyways, we got Mark Roberts with us today. This is gonna be really cool. So I know Mark, we met last June. Met you in June. Met you in June. I met you over a
Right.
mystical mountain, and with Brian Peters, he stared at me. He pointed at you and said, "This guy's gonna do the damage," and you did. So you took us through. You trained Brian and I, which was probably one of the coolest training day, probably one of the coolest training days I've had as my career as a coach or an athlete. Just training in the pool, the
Yeah.
heat, the cold, and some of the things that we were sort of doing. I think that was one of the reasons why Brian wanted me to come out so bad too, was to experience it in full. And but before we dive into some of those things, just for some people to get and understand, obviously you performance coach with XPT. You do a ton of stuff with their athletes and your athletes out there, and I know you do a
Yeah.
lot of traveling and those sort of things. But can you, for people to have an understanding of what we're gonna hear from you and understand from you, can you give a little breakdown of who you are, what you do, and a little bit about XPT and where you guys are headed?
Yeah. So obviously, my name is Mark. One of the performance directors over at XPT. We spend a lot of time, like you said, with a lot of different athletes and stuff. I was in Chicago and
Mm-hmm.
I moved out to California to live the dream,
Mm-hmm.
and to push what XBT is a little bit more forward. So I guess where we're heading into 2020, over the last couple of years, we started off with experiences. So letting the public kind of have a chance to feel what it's like to live a lifestyle of high performance, whether it's food, breath work, cutting edge, heat and sauna protocols, just like Laird and Gabby had developed over 20 years of their training.
Mm-hmm.
So it really just started with that, and then we kind of moved forward over a few years and thought, well, this will be really good as a platform to educate people.
Mm.
So that lent us to the involvement of curriculums and coaching certifications, and rolled in 2019 2020. Moving forward, we're starting to come out with more of the education on different platforms, more online work,
Yeah.
and just moving into the kind of military spaces and stuff like that, trying to work performance into the kind of the broader military population as well. So there's a
Wow.
lot going on. There's a lot of moving parts. It's hard to kind of pinpoint one that we're
Sure.
really moving singularly to, but right now we're just kind of everything we're touching, we're just trying to improve on right now.
That's so
Uh,
cool. We'll go
yeah,
stay on that topic because I would say, would you think, and you can give me your side of it too, but would you say a lot of people, because a lot of people would always urge to be singular with your focus, and you guys do branch out, but in from my perspective, and maybe this would be somebody else, so I'd have to think outside of somebody else's perception, but for me, that's super cool. That's what almost drew me to the experience as you said it, because it's everything is everything with XPT and yourself as a trainer. And I don't know, do you
yeah.
get any backlash of that from other opinions, like maybe you guys should get more singular or keep doing what you're doing? Because for me, I think it's awesome, but I guess you'd be the one that would have the experience of what other people think about that.
Yeah, well, I mean, for me too, it was the moment. It was like kind of almost like an aha moment.
Mm-hmm.
I played rugby in my youth and through my
Yeah.
20s. I was in and out of semi-professional, professional rugby, and that's. I mean, it's pretty diverse as far as training goes, but it's pretty singular as far as like your main focus, your lifting, your mentality, and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Your recovery is all pretty standardized. And by chance, Gabby and I had met and became friends, and
Mm-hmm.
she invited me out to the house, and it was after the first kind of breathing session where I had that kind of aha
Oh yeah.
moment. I was like, oh shit, okay,
Oh yeah.
okay, okay. And it was really so profound that I was like, this is my tribe, this is my place, this is where I need to be. And I set in place kind of a plan, a 3-year plan to be out here.
Oh wow.
But going back to that, I think I personally haven't received too much backlash on trying to be more singular as far as singular focus,
Yeah.
because it's really like, what do you want from us? Someone can come to us and say, well, I want to work more on my performance. I want to work on my uh, my mental abilities or my mental toughness, or I want to work in recovery. We have that avenue,
Right.
if we're going to use XPT. So if you came in, you said, I want to work on performance, we could work that singular path for you using our methodologies and our heat, our ice,
Yeah.
our pull training, our breath work. We can gear it towards that. So it's hard for someone just to come in and be like, well, I want it to go this way, because what is that way? Like, is that making sense?
It makes extreme
Trying to
sense. It's like what my mind goes to is extreme adaptability, and you guys have done that as a whole. And so now
exactly.
it's almost like, and that's how before we press play, that's you actually
Yeah,
just you clarified exactly what I was saying, what I thought was so cool about
yeah,
XPT. Because
yeah,
when I came out and trained with you, I mean, for people who are listening, obviously I'll pump your tires here for a second, but I thought you were a phenomenal trainer in the way that you communicated, right? And when it
yes,
comes down to it, it really is just about having a coach or having an atmosphere and experience where you feel like people care. And what I watched you do, and this is what I was saying to you before we press play, was I watched you talk to football, a basketball player, a rugby player. Now, these are some of the best athletes in the world, too. I mean, I'm
yeah,
talking about the highest end of football and basketball and rugby and
yeah,
such. And then I was obviously, I have a baseball background. And then you had guys who weren't in sports, but were trying to be physically fit. You had post athletes, you had older ages, younger ages.
yeah,
And I just to watch you communicate at all levels of it was something that it was insane to me, because that's what I think would be the most difficult part of coaching, is trying to change your language, right? You have to try to change your language to get to the learner at
for sure.
all times. And you did a great job of that, but then also so did everybody else, right? And so did
Yeah,
Yabby and Laird, and obviously I know PJ. We've talked to him a few times, and I know he does that too. And it was kind of like an insane community of people helping each other that I had never really witnessed before to that capacity. So
right.
now you look at it with anyone who comes to you. I think that it'd be a positive for them, even if they were saying, "Hey, I just want recovery." Well, now all of a sudden we can break your lens, and we can even get deeper into what recovery really is, And I think that's kind of what you
Right.
guys have done tremendously is kind of taking everything, making it
Yeah.
make sense, and then providing a position where you want to show up, which ultimately becomes anything, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, I think I mean, I'm in a fortunate position to be able to work with such a diverse um, group of humans, from elite athletes down to kind of very interesting, quirky general populations.
Yeah, yeah,
And I've always, I mean, for me personally, I've always been that kind of an empath, where I kind of can dive into someone else's language, whether
hmm
it be, those kind of A-type personalities all the way down to kind of introverts. And I've always had the ability and the curiosity to kind of, we'll find out what engages them,
yeah,
what kind of conversation will be able to spark an interest in them, and just changing your language slightly. But it doesn't have to be complicated, because at XPT, really, the language is human performance. The language is personal experience and searching.
yeah,
It's the language of seeking. And I think the magnetism of XPT really brings a certain person into that, so that your language doesn't actually have to be that diverse.
hmm
I mean, small nuances, yes, but people are already searching for this.
sure,
And if we can dose it in a language that is appropriate to them, whatever they hear, then it just makes it a little bit easier, because they've already they're already there. They're already sitting in a sauna at 220
Yeah.
for
Yeah.
15 minutes,
That'll wake you
trying
up.
to trying to keep their head up. And I'm like, I know what this feels like. And if you're an introvert, I know you don't really want to talk, so the conversation might be a little bit light. You just want to sit in your own thoughts, and or if you're yourself, I have to keep conversation going for like 20 minutes
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
the questions,
Oh
but
yeah. Oh yeah. They're coming. They're
but
coming.
I think it's not as hard to converse with people in an XPT format because they're already seeking what it is
For
we're
sure.
doing.
For sure.
So
That is so cool, man. And
yeah,
I mean, obviously, I love what you guys are doing, and I still say this. That was one of the coolest experiences I've had in my life. It just was
no, I
so fun.
appreciate that. That's cool. Yeah.
Yeah, it was so fun, man. And you guys were. It was just everyone was so cool and so exciting to learn from and those sort of things. But so now you said this a little earlier, and I've just been thinking about this. So here
Hmm.
comes into my curious questions. But when you look at I guess one, I'd just be curious of how did you establish that you need to create certifications for people to, okay, we need to expand this, we need to get this around the country at this point now, right? And
Yeah. Yeah.
how do we get people certified? Something that I'm definitely thinking about for what people would understand what they're getting certified in. Does that make sense? Because how
Yeah.
do you
Yeah.
create a certification where like the blueprint and what you're saying is an experience?
Right. Well, I mean, the experience is based upon human performance.
Right.
First and foremost, it's like how can we? It's a performance lifestyle.
Yeah, yeah.
So we can break down that lifestyle into breathe, move, and recover. So we have three kind of main pillars of what that is,
Sure.
and then we can break that down into, well, what is breathing? So PJ came in and he was really the kind of the the guy that just dug into what breathing was, and he
Yeah.
went to every breathing certification that he could find. He talked with the experts. We've been reading science literature, we've been reading studies and reviews, and really just trying to figure out what it is that breathing does
Mm.
is and how it can be applied. And the more you dive in, the more simple it becomes.
Right. Yeah.
The more simple it becomes, and then you start to think, okay, well, this is something that's so simple and so impactful on performance and overall health, whether it be physical health or even mental health.
Right.
Which is something a lot of athletes struggle with just as much as physical health.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's like, well, this would be really important stuff. How would you create a certification around just breathing? And then it's like, okay, well, the physiology of the breath. How does the breath work? What are the main biochemical, physio-psychological, and biomechanical factors? So you just break it down and think, okay, well, what's the best way that someone could learn this?
Mm-hmm.
Let's give people a better understanding of what this is so they can then go and tell their populations, whether it be physical trainers, yoga practitioners. So people who do this already on a very kind of simple level,
Mm-hmm.
how do we give them information that lets them understand it in a really deep level so then they can prescribe it and dose it to their populations?
Yeah.
And we did the same uh, with our recovery. So recovery came to the heat and ice, so
Yep.
the sauna and the cold, and again, what is it that is so magical about it? What does it do to the body? How do we dose it? And then our movement, we go into the pool, and we use the pool as this marker of performance and marker of training, and we put weights in the bottom of the pool and let people flounder until they get it right.
Yeah. Best of luck. Hey, go in there, figure it out.
So it just became like this. Well, people have been introduced to it.
Right.
People are doing it. There's many populations who spend their lives in water.
Yep.
People spend their lives breathing. People spend their lives recovering. Well, let's give them an opportunity to dig a little deeper and figure out like how and why and when to do it. And it just kind of was born from that.
Yeah.
Spread the message.
Yeah, well, and you guys are doing a phenomenal job of that. I mean, you're essentially your
Thank you.
target market is the entire world. when we really,
Yeah, I mean, we
really
did.
break it
Yeah,
down.
PJ went and did a certification in Australia. We've got, always have an international. Every certification now we have people are coming in from New Zealand, Australia, England, the Netherlands, across Europe.
Wow.
Yeah, it's incredible. It's really incredible the amount of diversity we're now starting to get, especially in the LA certs, because that's a good hub
Yep.
for international people. And
Yeah.
it's, so
Well, it's
yeah,
also, and I kind of have a inside look into a lot of what you guys are doing with the breath and the heat
sure,
and pretty much all the pillars, right? And so, because you
right,
guys have taken, and this is what I really like too, because I'd like to think that we've had similar ideologies, if you will, of how to
yeah,
create performance. And you guys have done a phenomenal job of taking mainstream stuff, ancient wisdom, science, your own experiences. You've had so many. You've also built your train like breathing. Like
yeah,
you could look at breath, and someone could be a power lifter, right? And they just look at breath as bracing, and that's how they categorize breath, right?
sure,
And then yoga could look at breath and teach it entirely different, or on and on and on, right?
yeah,
And you guys have taken, not only do you create the human performance lifestyle or vibes around all of those things, but you've also taken just movement and you've added your own intuition, your own, ancient, like I said, ancient wisdoms and these sort of
yeah,
things. And
yeah.
so what is a day in the life of yourself or your team of how you guys come up and discover ways of training?
Well, for me, I'm pretty close to Gabby and Laird,
Yeah.
so I'm fortunate enough to train there, 3-4 times a week,
Mm-hmm.
and really, they have a community. You were there. It's
Yeah.
just random people of the most unbelievable caliber.
Yeah.
Just turn up and just show up and do work, and Laird and Gabby are just there sometimes just innovating on the spot.
Wow.
What if we do this? Hey, I got a dive belt. I was on a dive recently and I got a dive belt. It's 55 pounds. Why don't you strap into that and let's try movements with, and it's just chaotic sometimes
Yeah.
because there's just constant innovation and constant. I'm there and I'm trying to figure out from, my brain works as a performance coach. So I'm like, okay, well, how would I dose this? Would it be like a 2 minute like I'm just trying to
Yeah.
categorize everything that's going on. And then I take it back and be like, hey, PJ, this is what we did. How would we categorize this? Would this be a performance movement, a ballistic movement? Would we use it as recovery?
Mm.
So anytime there's any kind of innovation with Laird or Gabby, or even just Laird and I just kind of messing around the pool, um, we just kind of come up with things to do, and then we figure out how and where to kind of pigeonhole it on the kind of performance scale. Is it
Yeah.
a great one for recovery? Like we've got bungee cat belt and put it at the end of the pool, and now we do like swims, bungee swims, and prone paddling and stuff. So it's like recovery day. Okay, we'll go on a 30-minute prone paddle,
Oh,
and you're
wow.
attached to a bungee. So there's just different things constantly evolving.
Yeah.
And then you're in the heat, and then you're near ice, and then it's ever changing, and I'm just trying to keep up with that and figure out how do I write this into a program, or how do I put this into our performance drop down list of exercises. It's
Yeah,
like,
oh yeah, for sure. Well, then
yeah,
it's also what you've already said about making your speaking or your coaching relatable to the people. Because intuition. Me and Brian says to each other all the time. Your intuition is your highest form of intelligence, right? I mean, you're essentially intuitively creating things at all times. I mean, we have a little saying at MindStrong about how anything outside of nature was made up out of human intuition,
I
and
love
so,
that.
yeah,
Yeah,
and so now all of a sudden you have to take that and then you do have to program it, because my brain isn't your brain or Laird's brain, right, or your
oh
guys'
yeah,
brain together. And so what you guys are seeing, I might not see, or vice versa, right? And so
right.
it is cool, and I gotta imagine that makes it a lot of fun, right? And just to give some people, where you keep saying heat and ice, because I think we like heat and ice as well. We love it. We've built a company around it, so it's a huge
Yeah, well,
deal.
I saw your
The,
new mobile sauna, which is unbelievable,
oh man, we put some that took.
unbelievable.
Yeah, that thing is yeah, you'll be in it. Like I said, when you go to Chicago in those months, we'll bring you up.
Yeah,
It's a wood fire. So we always sometimes when we do our coffee buzz podcast, we turn on the stove and we try to hang in there as long as we can.
It's like
And
the four seasons of saunas. It's unbelievable.
well, we built ours purely out of, I mean, we've been doing saunas and ice for, I would say, about 5 or 6 years here.
Yeah, yeah,
Obviously, kind of just made a turn 2 years ago and said, we got to make this, we got to give this to more people. And a lot of it was mostly what turned us into it was we're in Minnesota. I mean, you're in Chicago. I mean, we're in
yeah,
Minneapolis, man. It is cold. So it
yeah. It
was a
is.
way to feel outside. We were building these outdoor wood fire saunas that you would feel outdoors in. You get all
Yeah,
steamed up, and then you can sit in the snow. You can have you can have a coffee out there, and you can feel out in nature, which is huge for Northerners. So that was
so important.
we mostly did it for ourselves, and then it just people started doing it. We kind of saw what you guys were doing, and we're like, okay,
Yeah,
people are making, people, we can do this. We can help people with this, but uh, for my experience when I came and trained with you, that was kind of the first thing you did, right? You go into the heat, you get warmed
yeah,
up, you kind of start talking to people. It was always kind of not a slow start. I shouldn't say slow start as like people were limping into their workout, but it was a slow start in the way that you grabbed a sweat in the heat and you talked to people and you communicated and you kind of started planning for your workout, and it was a really cool environment. But
yeah.
is there a way that you guys have seen some benefits for dosing or sauna and ice, or people who are listening to this that would they have a sauna at a Lifetime or LA or whatnot, and they, people will go in and they'll jump in and get a sweat and then they'll go get on the treadmill or whatnot.
Yeah.
When I was there with you guys, we just kind of felt it the whole time. Go in the heat, go in
Yeah.
the ice, go in the pool. Now,
Yeah.
when you program that type of day for people, what are some tips that you have for dosing within the heat and ice?
Okay, so we can break it down into kind of three main areas.
Yeah.
So heat and ice, we can either look at it as recovery, as performance, or as mental toughness.
Mm.
So if we let's look at recovery first. So if you're looking for a recovery day, right, you're looking to de-stress the system, de-stress the mind. So we would probably dose the sauna sub maximally being like just before it gets uncomfortable.
Mm.
So your body gets a good dose of it. You get warmed up, you get the appropriate physiological response, but you're not really stressing the system. You're not going so hot that your eyes are crossing. And
Yeah.
so that would be the recovery aspect. And I would say, you could pair that with the ice if you have the ability to have ice and heat together. Going back and forth between heat and ice, getting the contraction and dilation, and just pumping fluids around the body, passively getting the heart rate up, working on that blood pressure back and forth. Just use that as your recovery day.
Yeah.
I would only use heat and ice, and if I could only use one, I would use heat,
Oh, okay.
because
Yeah.
ice could be quite stressful in the system.
Mm-hmm.
So sauna, they say sauna is king with that long wave radiation, the wood and the heat and the heat shock proteins, and how those kind of help repair cells that chaperone. So there's a lot going on in the heat that kind of really aid to that recovery process. So for me, I would on my recovery days, I would go up to the sauna and just spend 10 minutes in there before it gets too uncomfortable. I'd step out, I'd kind of move around,
Yeah.
then I'd go back in just before. So I'd typically spend about an hour on and off in the sauna on a recovery day.
And and you're just cooling off
And
outside of it.
I'm just cooling off outside. I'll just move. Maybe I'll do some mobility work.
Okay.
And then just head back in and for about an hour, maybe four different times in
Yeah.
and out of the sauna,
I love that.
working on movement and then back in. And that's just low dose, not stressing the system, just getting your body kind of back to its kind of center point. Let's look at mental. So if you want to have a mental capacity day,
Mm-hmm.
if you want to go in and really stretch your mind,
Oh, yeah. Which
or
I
your
can do that.
toughness, which you
Yeah.
can do.
Yeah.
We typically crank the sauna up, and these days, Laird got a new sauna, and it hits 250,
Wow.
and I don't know how long you can last in that, because as soon as you step in, you're like, this is uncomfortable. As soon
Yeah.
as you walk in, there's no time to adapt to it. It's just immediately uncomfortable. But that's the point, I guess. That's why it's that hot, because it's immediately oppressively uncomfortable.
That is in
From
250. I just need people to
from
hear that again.
yeah, 250, 250.
And
It's
you guys are in there.
and we're in there, and we do as much as we can in there. So from a mental capacity day, I'll go in and spend 15 minutes, I think, between 220 and 240, I think, is where it kind of hovers around for the most times.
Wow.
15 minutes in there gets really, really uncomfortable, like really stressful.
Yeah.
You can feel your heart rate pumping. You can feel almost anxious.
Yeah.
And then we try and stay for another 2 minutes. You try and stay well beyond your capacity for comfort. And that's what we try and use for that mental capacity today. It's like, are you able to deal with that oppressively uncomfortable situation?
Mm-hmm.
And that's very, very important, because people are too comfortable.
Oh,
When we look at
I agree.
when we look at thermal regulation, look at your house. We go from a climate controlled house. Imagine if your house got to 68 degrees. You're like, oh my God, it's cold in here. What happened? Who shut off the heating? And it's like, when did we become so soft as humans to 68 in an environment is cold?
Right.
I got to put on a jumper. I got to turn the heat back on.
Oh yeah. No, I'm mad. I'm mad if it gets down to 68 here.
Yeah, right. But it really affects you. You're really sensitive to it.
Yeah.
You're really, really sensitive to that. So what we're trying to do, from the heat aspect, is trying to really push your ability to be comfortable in heat. And then on the flip side of that, we'll go into the ice, and we'll use the ice as mental capacity.
Sure.
For the most part, because when you jump in, you did it yourself. When you jump in, there's just that moment of just sheer panic. All systems think your body is going to die.
Mm-hmm.
From a biological standpoint, your body's like, well, this is it. Let's throw everything we have at this guy to see if we can keep him alive.
Right.
Which is what we need. Anxiety,
Yep.
fear, your nervous system goes super sympathetic. Your heart rate, your blood pressure, everything gets dumped in at once. And your ability to deal with that, to manage that, and to stay in that suck, to stay in that oppressive cold, starts to, what Goggins says, callous the mind, strengthen the mind to be able to deal with those uncomfortable situations. And they translate way outside of ice. Every day. Like, I've got a 2.5-year-old, and it helps calm the mind. Can I deal with this uncomfortable screaming child for a little bit longer? And it's passive, but it really, really, really helps. So that's the mental aspect, or the mental toughness aspect, is your ability to deal. And I think one of the things that people are sensitive to is their initial reaction to the cold.
Right. It's a panic. Right.
It's a panic, but it's showing your panic is stage one.
Right.
If you outwardly show that you're panicked or stressed, then you've already lost, right? You've already set in motion that panic. So for me, a big practice is staying stone face in stress, stone face in uncomfort. Or discomfort, sorry.
Oh yeah.
Whether it be in really heat, whether it's be like really, really hot, can I stay calm, collected, and look comfortable on the outside? Because that will channel the inner me to stay there.
Well, I think that you're right on. I want to stay on that topic. I just want I want to bring some substance to even what you're saying. And I don't know if I shared this when I was out there, but this is what you're saying right now is essentially my belief, our beliefs of obviously in baseball, and I'd be curious what they do with rugby and other sports that you've obviously played in or coached and whatnot. But in sports like baseball, golf, tennis, whatever where sports psych is seen as like a huge deal, right? Like the mental side of baseball is like people will argue that that's more important than the physical side. Whether it is or isn't, it's whatever. It's kind of opinion based, but the thing that I never really understood until I met the heat and the ice was it's also for people that are listening and for them to understand, it's like a progressive way to increasing mental strength.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of times we focus, especially in sports or outside of that or whatnot, we spend a lot of time on a subjective cause, and we just keep trying to see if it's making sense or not, and you don't really know if you're making progress. And so it's like you look at the psychological state of athletes or whatnot. We'll throw a lot more stuff, and I call it problems. We'll put more problems on your plate thinking we're helping. So here, let's have a breakdown of
Yeah.
a psychological testing, or let's really dive into our self-talk and these sort of things. My best coach, and I tell people this all the time, if you want to go have your best mental training, and learn your self-talk and learn your survival senses and learn what your panic is, what you're saying right there of getting in the ice. If you want to go learn all that stuff,
Yeah.
go sit in the sauna at the 220 or go sit in this ice tub, and it'll tell you very quickly who
Right.
you are, what you're thinking, how you can control that. And then it progresses it, right? And you see, and like you're saying with your child and your life and those sort of things, when you learn how to breathe in those situations, it
Yeah.
really does transfer over to life. Even if you don't practice breathing, let's say you just did heat and ice, it
Yeah.
will transfer over because you have to calm your breathing or the ice is going to destroy you.
For sure. It does. I mean, your your breath is the direct remote control
Mm-hmm.
to your nervous system. They're not mutually exclusive. These are intertwined so deeply
Yeah.
that we can control one with the other and vice versa. And if you want to get yourself jazzed up and in a sympathetic state, you can use your breath.
Yeah.
Or if you're jazzed up and you want to calm yourself down, you use your breath.
Breath.
It just is. And you can talk about other ways to do it and supplements and this and that, but
Right.
there is no other sheer, acute, definite, immediate way to do it than just to breathe. Slow your breath down, control your breathing. And, one of our test beds for our breathing protocols is the ice.
Oh, nice. Okay.
So one of the things that we do is like, okay, so we've taught you the mechanics,
Yep.
we've taught you the foundations of breathing, and we've kind of lent into, well, why and how does it help the nervous system and how can you control your nervous system.
Yeah.
And we do it on land. We take people through kind of breathing cadences, and we slow their heart rate down. We slow their nervous system down to a parasympathetic state, which is all very comfortable and nice because it's more meditative. It's more guided
For
breathing.
sure. Yeah.
And we're like, okay, well, let's put this into practice. It's like, so you understand what I'm saying when I want you to lower your breath or slow your exhales down. Yep, got it. Okay, I've got this. Yep, no problem. I understand. Okay, so we're going to test you and put you into a situation where you have no control over the stress. Right? So
Mm-hmm.
this all-encompassing stressful situation, can you use those tools that I just told you? And very quickly you find out people who can and can't. And very often and not, we find that the small, dainty, quiet female has the most incredible ability to stay calm under that pressure. Where
Wow. Yeah.
we get the big boys in, we get those alpha males with
Yeah.
the puffed chest, and they struggle.
Why
Anecdotally,
is that?
well, I mean, for me personally, I just knowing and working with so many of these athletes,
Yeah.
it's the ability to submit, right?
Oh,
Control
sure. Yeah. Yeah.
to something other than I can fight through this or I can battle through this because I've trained my entire life physically to be an absolute brute. But when it comes to something that is out of their control, that's that like poof, it's that like that panic mode
Right.
where they have to submit to something that is not comfortable.
That is
You know,
powerful. Yeah, I do. Yeah. It's almost like you can't, because you're not going to beat the ice, you
no, you're
know?
not going to beat the ice.
And you think of these alpha type males that are, that have done that for so long, they've only made it to their peaks through beating people. Like purely, I will just go to the brink of whatever to beat you,
Yeah, and it's CEOs, athletes, CEOs, like these kids that have this mentality, and it's obviously done them well, served them very well because they're
Right.
at the top of their game.
Right.
But there's other sides to the game, right? There's longevity.
Yeah.
There's the ability to control your. You might be that guy that's like the best, but your attitude stinks and you're not very, capable of dealing with stress or, real-time stresses. So this is one way to really challenge that system, to throw someone on the ice and see how they can breathe their way out of it.
So amazing. It's so amazing. How if you stay on the ice topic, or you kind of talked about the three
Yeah, yeah,
dosage of heat,
yeah.
what is the ice? Because I know a lot of people will ask me questions or are thinking this right now as you're talking about ice, and obviously we're probably making it sound, it is cool, and people
It
should
is.
use it as a tool, right? But
It is for sure.
are you using, simple questions, right? After a
Yeah.
workout, we try to tell our guys to avoid ice right after a workout and thinking of kind of delaying that for a few hours or so. What do you think about that? How many days a week would you use the ice?
Yeah, yeah.
All those sort of things. And I'm sure you've been asked
Yes,
already.
so absolutely, and there's a lot of studies and there's a lot of research on it, and I'll touch on that first point you said. You don't go on the ice immediately afterwards because the old adage of it reduces inflammation,
Yeah.
which is needed to adapt to the training. What we just did. So if our athletes are training and we're breaking down the muscles, say it's a strength day and we're breaking down the muscles, and the intention of the day is to grow and to perform and to increase capacity of muscle tissue.
Mm-hmm.
We need inflammation for that to happen.
Right.
So yes, when we're talking about elite athletes who have specific training goals and specific training methods, then yeah, for sure, keep them out of the ice post and put them in later on, a few hours later.
Yeah.
Because you don't want to dull any kind of response to the training, right? So, but when we talk about general population, we talk about more so, people are just enthusiastic about training, and they're kind of getting into that athlete mentality. It was like, well, I can't go on the ice straight after because it's going to dull my response, and I won't get as much hypertrophy as that. Like that's not necessarily the case, because that loss of maybe 1% that you of muscle activation you get going in the ice straight after a workout. I don't think it'll carry over into your everyday kind of lifestyle.
Nice. Yeah.
So for the most part, I'd say it's fine going into the ice after a workout, because what's your goal? Is your goal to do one thing at the end of a training? Say you're a baseball player and it's preseason, and you're working towards that season opener.
Yeah.
You have a specific goal. You have specific numbers set to you by your coaches. So yeah, you take in consideration all variables.
Right.
But if your goal is just to enjoy training, longevity, being able to work out every day, then your priority should be recovering every day.
Okay. Yeah.
Because then that sets you up for the next day. Oh, I can train harder next day, or I can train over 5 days a week. So,
and does that matter with temperatures? Like, you got to do temperature. Do you do temperature with mental and recovery as well? Like, do you really, or do you just freeze it?
We do. I mean, we try our protocol for the most part is we try and get anywhere between 33 and 36 degrees.
Yeah. Which is freezing, just for people to understand.
Which is freezing, which is really, really cold. And it's a definite shock to the system. But we get it down that cold because it only lasts, for about 3 minutes.
Oh, sure. Yeah.
So we're just reducing the amount of time that we spend in the ice.
Mm-hmm.
So if we were going to go to an ice bath around 40 degrees, we'd say, let's stay in for about 5 minutes, and so on and so forth. So if we go from like 40 to 45 degrees, let's go on 8 to 10 minutes. So it's dose appropriate. The response that you want to get will take longer the warmer the water.
Sure.
But you never really want to go anywhere above 50 degrees, because then you have to stay in for like 30 minutes.
Right. Yeah, and that's where it's because we used to do ice tubs. I used to do ice tubs. Did you do them when you were playing rugby?
We did the old jump in the trash can kind of thing. And it was, everybody hooped and hollered for about 5 minutes, and then everyone got out, because there was no intention. There was no we were just told you need to do this. There
Right.
was no,
Oh man,
okay.
we were the same way. We were the same way, and
Yeah,
you just well, and that's why I asked that too, because
yeah,
when I was growing up, it was for pitchers' arms, right? It was ice your arm,
yeah,
and
yeah,
everyone. I would say when I was going through high school, it started dying down in college, but everyone
yeah,
iced their arm. Instead of doing any movement for recovery. I mean, breath
yeah.
wasn't even at the table of discussion yet, right? And
Right.
so you would pitch in a game, you'd grab an ice pack and you'd put it on your shoulder, your elbow, and you'd sit there and you'd recover, right? And that was your thinking.
Yeah,
Where at the end, when I was professionally playing, none of us really iced our arms. A few guys might have, I don't remember, unless you were really
yeah.
banged up, maybe really sore, inflamed, or actually
Right.
getting injured. There were some times where they do some ice protocols, but it's kind of the same thing now. That's kind of why I ask. And I think that was a great answer, right? Because
Yeah,
like for me, I don't need to, I can go sit in the ice and I like the ice. I spend some sort of cold exposure daily, right? Morning,
yes,
afternoon, late at night. And I think that's good for people to hear because, when I was pitching competitively, I didn't want to ice my arm right afterwards. I needed the adaptation. I needed to sustain that and be able to throw and prepare and be able to do that over and over again. Whereas,
yeah,
I've never wanted people to really, now, you don't want to look at the ice as a crutch. If you're an athlete, don't use the ice as this is my savior, right? And then also no
yeah,
dosage, no timing, temperature, because I remember our ice tubs were around 50, 55, I think they were. And
yeah.
we would just do the same thing. We'd jump in there. We'd go, I hate this. We'd laugh through it. And then you'd get out and go, okay, I'm good, you know? And I think that that's really important because you guys do a great job with the dosing and the temperature. I mean, the day I sat in the ice, it was a blank. I don't even know. Laird had us getting buckets of ice for like an hour and a half. I felt like we were
Yeah,
just,
that's part of the workout. Yeah, it's part of the workout. You
yeah,
get the ice.
it was like 12 more, 12 more.
Yeah,
We just put 12 in there. What do you mean 12 more? So
you have to scoot your way into the ice. You have to like shuffle yourself down into the ice. You don't. There's no water. No
yeah, no,
water.
no. I think that's part of the panic too. Is that you're just
Yeah,
sitting with a blanket of ice on you. You just go, "Where am I?" But when you go to this, and again, I guess you can generalize this, but would you
yeah.
suggest using heat and ice to some capacity, 7 days a week, 6 days a week, whatever you're? Obviously, it'd be different for anyone's fitness goals, but
Well, look, yeah. So if you want to use, let's break it down to ice. If
yeah,
you want to use the ice every single day, go for it. It's going to make you feel great.
hmm
It's going to help long term or system wide inflammation. But you just got to understand that if you do it every day or if you do it consistently at low temperatures, your body will adapt to that.
yeah,
So your response, your physiological response to that ice will lessen as time goes on, as the more you do it, right? So if you're going in the ice every day or 4 or 5 times a week, you got to understand that your adaptation and the response, or the training response, I guess you want to call it,
yeah,
dulls over time. So you're not getting the same adaptation. You're not constantly on this upward curve of performance.
mm,
But if it makes you feel good and it sets a good tone mentally and physically for you throughout the week, then what's more important? What are you going to prioritize? Do you constantly want to adapt yourself to cold, or are you comfortable in the cold and it's something that makes you feel good? It's something you look forward to and something that kind of sets your week up or sets your day up.
well
Then
said,
I think that's more important
absolutely.
for 90%, 95% of the population than trying to find that 1% change in adaptability to cold. You know, if it makes you feel good and
And
you enjoy doing it and you look forward to doing it, and it actually creates a community around you because you need other people to come and do it with you,
right,
that's the best thing for you. That's
absolutely.
way more important for humans than it is trying to squeeze 1% out of your system, you know.
That is, yeah, I'm really happy you say that. And for people listening to this too, thinking about it as you're hearing, a lot of people are hearing a lot of, I mean, XPT, you guys are geniusly insane is the best way I'd put it, right? Because
Right, right.
because I mean, when I do think about some of these experiences, the one time I sat in it was like 225 or something, you guys just kept hitting it and steaming
Yeah.
it and then asking me questions. And, I was the new guy the first day. So it was,
Yes.
you don't want to not be able to answer questions, but then
No.
these guys are burning my brain in half while they're asking them to me, but,
It's beautiful.
it's
It's
beautiful. So like I
beautiful.
said, magnificent experience. It was one of the best experiences I've ever had. But, for those sort of things, and you're saying adaptation if you are just looking to feel good, have a good community around you, you're hearing, and I love the temperatures because Brian Peters and I would love to try out a 250, and obviously we
Well,
like the cold and those sort of things. But
yeah.
what can people understand of what their body's doing? Are there any health concerns? Do you ever get nervous about people jumping in the ice for the first time? Is there any things that people could sort of before they start diving in this, because people will hear this and and they'll start testing the
Mon-
waters of their body. So
monkey see, monkey do. Yeah,
yeah,
we get that a lot, and that is one of our concerns with XBT, because we do push the boundaries of mental and physical
100% you do.
abilities,
Right.
and we have never had any situations, but that doesn't go on that we don't want to be the first. We
Sure.
don't want to be the first group of people that have a situation. But we just, if you have a heart condition, or if you're on medication for blood pressure, I would just err on the side of caution, because we are talking about affecting your blood pressure, affecting your immediately affecting your blood pressure, severe drops and increases in blood pressure just due to the constriction and dilation of blood vessels,
Right.
when you go into heat and ice. So if it is something that you have to think about, then I'd say just err on the caution.
Right.
Don't go so cold. If you're new to ice baths, I'd say start by putting your shower, or your morning shower,
Yep.
cold,
Mm-hmm.
so you have the ability to dose it. So kind of get yourself prepared, see how your body responds to being in a cold situation, and then go from there. Just kind of ease your way in. If it is something that you're concerned about, if it is a conversation that you're having with yourself, like,
yeah,
oh, I don't know, I'm taking these medications, I don't know if that would be good for me, then just listen to your body and say, okay, well, let's go take a shower, let's turn it to as cold as I can, and let's see how I respond.
see how I respond. Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it is pretty intense, and those responses are pretty real.
Well, they are real. Like the shiver. I mean, people will have shivers. What do you have for advice on people that will have a post ice shiver?
Post ice shiver. I mean, sometimes we get pretty cold, and if we've done multiple rounds of ice and heat, your core body temperature is affected as well.
Right.
That's the point. Sometimes you get a shiver. You're a little cold, so I'd just say warm up. So
Mm-hmm.
we typically suggest ending on cold. But if you're really cold, and how cold you are, if you're like, oh, you try and speak and your chin is shuddering, then just go heat up again, or wrap up warm, grab some food. Just be just be smart, be sensible, understand, because this whole thing's about listening to your body too,
Right.
right?
Right.
It's all part of the thing. It's like, if I'm really cold, don't try and work through that. Just go and heat up. It's fine.
Well,
Just because we say, oh, we like to finish on cold, doesn't mean you have to finish on cold. If you feel cold, go warm up.
Well,
It's cool.
and I think that's the whole art part of it, right? It is an art, and it is again going back to what you guys do and what you create. I mean, when you said earlier you just drop dumbbells in the pool and guys got to get better at it. I mean, that is essentially what happened. I still remember, and if Steve
Yeah.
Wright listens to this, he'll start laughing. But that was my first experience. Do you remember that? He goes, grab
Yeah.
those 50s. We're gonna go do 50 squats in the pool, and I was like, okay, sure, and it was horrifying and it sucked and I didn't know what was going on. But then you get out of it. And that was the first thing that everyone relayed to me immediately. Like, hey, we're improving, we're helping, and we're learning, and we're feeling. And again, that comes back to a lot of what we've been talking about the entire podcast
Right.
is it creates a way to intuitively think and feel and be, right? And that's something
Yeah.
that I think that all of what we've been talking about and a lot of what XPT does and a lot of what you do as a trainer is you do need to feel it. And that's what makes things so fun, because all of us are our own genius, we're all our own person. So
Yes.
if you can understand, okay, what is the ice telling me? What is the heat telling me? A lot of the guys that I train in baseball or football and whatnot here, hockey, I always tell them, the thing that's beautiful about the heat and the ice is it'll tell you how you're doing in life. If you
Yeah.
if you go into that ice and it's really stressful, okay, well then why? Because you could be physiologically off somewhere else from lack of sleep, lack of nutrition. Maybe you're not having good conversations at home and it's been
Yeah.
weighing on your mind. It's funny how temperature, climate change just has a way of teaching you that, and I think another thing that you personally do that I love, well, I'm sure all you guys do it, but I love following this part about you is you take those days and you go out into nature. And I know that you stress a lot of
Yeah.
getting people out into nature, getting people out into that silence. And it's like that's where you find all your thinking and your thoughts and your reason to want to adapt as a human, because ultimately that's what we're all responsible for, is our own adaptation to be
Yeah.
better people, right?
Yeah.
What it,
Yeah. And
yeah, go
I
ahead.
love that part. The big part is just getting out into nature, feeling nature.
Yeah.
And one of the things that I described, I talk about is like, just have a word with yourself.
Mm-hmm.
You know, you
Mm-hmm.
have a word with yourself, and one of the best
It's
places to do
awesome.
that is in the pool or in the ice, because there's no one else that's talking to you than you. You're
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
the inner voice is very, very, very loud at that point, very, very prominent. And very often we have a negative inner voice. We have that, like, oh, you should get out, this hurts, oh, you can't do this, what are you doing this for? Like, there's such an immediate negativity in our, we I like to say, like, coach yourself or talk
Yeah.
to yourself like you're talking to your loved one. Like, if I'm taking you through your first day of ice bath and you jump out because you can't handle it, I'm not going to say to you, what's wrong with you, get
Yeah.
back in there, you're a loser, you can't do this. I'd say, hey man, no worries, just take your time, have a word with yourself, get back in, let's see if we can go for another 10 seconds.
Mm.
And we need to start learning to talk to ourselves that way. And because that's ultimately the best way to take care of yourself, is to tell yourself you're okay.
That is awesome.
To let
Yeah.
yourself, and that's why I get into nature a lot. Because that, for me, historically, for me, that's the one place that I have my biggest breakthroughs, my biggest conversations with myself.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not even to myself, but sometimes it's out loud. Sometimes I'll chit chatter to myself as I'm walking.
Mm.
um, and and it really just helps center myself and bring me back to, like, okay, here's where I am. All right, things were chaotic, or things were a bit slow. I'm back. Let's go. So I think that one thing that we can practice is finding your inner voice
Mm.
again,
Mm-hmm.
but finding that positive inner voice, being comforting to yourself. So that's big
That's
things.
nails, man. That's nails.
Yeah.
And I think this is a perfect time to segue in, because we always ask people, we call it our diamond series, right? So your
Yeah.
purpose, your standards, your systems, and your vision. And so going where you're at right now, because you're nailing it. When you look at
Yeah.
yourself, you're talking a lot about how you train people, heat and ice. You're giving a lot of great nuggets out there, but stay in that aspect of yourself now and look at it. Okay,
Yeah.
well, Mark Roberts, as you continue to evolve, and you're doing a tremendous thing I'll say it, and I mean this, but for the human
Yeah.
race, and
Well, we appreciate that.
yeah, and I think what you guys are doing is amazing for people, right? And
Yeah.
it will be really fun to see what continues to grow out of it and what continues to have people experience things on their own. I think there's a lot of excitement that's happening globally around this sort of
Yeah.
way of living, and you guys are the front runners of pushing that. So, but for you, inside of that as
Yeah.
an individual, what is your purpose? When you think of it as your identity or your service to others or what you're willing to struggle for, that's sort of our blanket when we look at the evolution of our purpose. Obviously this can change and will change over time, but in the moment, you know, what gets you individually excited to keep expanding this to more and more people?
Okay, well, that's a great. Oh God, that's a great question. I love these.
Get your
I love
floaty,
these ones. These are,
get your floaties on, Mark. We're gonna go tread some water
okay,
here.
okay, we're going for a paddle. Okay, well, yeah. I mean, listen, I've been a performer, a performance guy my entire life. I've always. I'm the kid that the group of friends that say, "Hey, do this," and I'll do it.
Yeah.
You know, without thought, without hesitation, I'll try it. And I've always experimented on myself
Mm.
what my body, what this body can do. Like, what am I capable of? How high can I climb?
Yeah.
How low? I got into freediving because I wanted to find out what it feels like to go 100 feet plus deep. So for me personally, on my personal journey, um, I really, really just want to find out what my body is capable of, because I feel like I've got low mileage on my body. As many activities as I've done in my life, I
Yeah.
feel pretty low mileage, and I feel like there's so much more for me to explore, and I don't want to leave any stone unturned. So when it comes to me, my philosophy is like train for everything,
Wow.
because anything is possible.
Yeah.
And that for me is like, well, if I get a mountain bike, I want to be the best mountain biker I can be. I want to study the bike. I want to study, how to ride trails. I want to study how to land. If I'm going to go freediving, I want to be the best freediver I can be. And that kind of rolls into why XPT kind of stood out to me, and why I want to keep pushing XPT forward, because it is constantly pushing me as a human, both mentally trying to find out as much information about what we're doing as possible,
Yeah.
but also physically pushing the lifestyle. What more can we do to increase this XPT lifestyle, this performance lifestyle?
For sure.
And then that kind of segues its way, and I'm a dad now. I've got a 2.5-year-old, and I want to be the best version of myself. I want to be the best husband. I want to be the best dad, but it has to start with me. And I can't be those things if I am not the best version of myself in
Absolutely.
my own space. If I can't take care of myself, then I'm not going to be able to take care of my wife, my family, my friends. So for me, I think it's a very selfless thing to work on myself, even
Yeah.
though it sounds selfish. But I think the one thing that we can do for others is to work on yourself, work on your ability to handle stress. Number one, I think, is the biggest one.
Mm.
Not how strong you can be for someone, not how smart you can be for someone, but how capable you can be in stress.
That
Because
is, yeah. Go ahead.
that's the one thing. That's the one thing that crumples most of us, is inability to deal with stress. And when shit hits the fan, when it inevitably does at any time, I want to be prepared.
Mm.
And I want to be the guy that people lean on. I want to be the useful human. I don't want to be the liability. I want to be the guy that can deal with trauma, deal, with a situation where people are hurt, deal with a situation where people need rescued, or people need information, or I want to be able to cover all bases. So that leads me into XPT, and that's why I do XPT, and that's why I want to share it with everyone, because I think those are the most important things for us to do
That
as
is,
humans.
yeah, that is. I just got into a rabbit hole of listening to you, man. That
Yeah,
is
I know.
powerful. That is well, that is really cool. And I want to keep staying on you. My little
Yeah,
tidbit of it that I really liked about hearing
yeah,
you is you are exposed to so many people.
yeah,
And so now your accountability level as a a family man, a dad, a friend, your own self, then all the
yeah,
people you've trained and coached, the experiences you have. I mean, a lot of that stuff relies on who you bring to the table,
yeah,
and so, and you know that, and I know that was the first thing I could pick up when I was with you was you just kind of took the environments and you open it up to all of us. I look at it, I had no business being able to, to train with you guys, and to the way you treated me and everyone treated me was just it was so welcoming in an environment that perceptionally you would never think of, right? You would never
Yeah.
think that you would be welcome into an environment and led so genuinely that as I was, and that's something that you have to do those things for yourself if you're going to be able to sustain the accountability that I know you're under,
Yeah.
and that's really cool, man. And so again, I just had to say that because that's all I was thinking about while you were talking. But
Well, yeah, I appreciate that, and I mean, it's easy for me because it's passion. It's
yeah,
love of my environment and love of my what I'm doing right now. And for someone to come in and to be curious of what we're doing, oh, I'll unleash everything I've got.
yeah, yeah, oh yeah, oh
I'll
yeah.
I'll tell you everything. We'll bring you in. I'll hold your hand no matter where you need to go, because that brings me joy.
Mm-hmm.
That is the one thing. It's just like, if I'm tidying away someone else's weights, and they're like, oh no, you don't have to do that. I'm like, or taking out someone's like if Gabby has trash and I'll take it out to her bins, and she's
Yeah,
like, oh, don't do that. It's like, don't stop me from creating joy for myself.
yeah,
It's like, I'm going to do this because it brings me joy,
yeah.
not because I feel like I have to. It's like, it brings me joy to do things for other people. It brings me joy to be able to take people to the edge of their comfort zone and beyond,
Wow.
and then watch them as they grow. That brings me joy. So that's why I do it, because selflessly, it's for me to help, it
Yeah, yeah.
increase my self joy. So
Well, yeah, well, so your sense of joy and what you want people to do has high standards, and so you
it
look
it
at
does.
your
It does.
own personal standards. And that's the
Yeah.
kind of the segue after purpose, staying on that same topic. What are some of the things that you personally, mentally, physically, emotionally have to, I sort of guess cross off, but I don't like using that language, I suppose, but more of
Yeah.
what do you look at yourself and go, all right, hey, mentally, physically, emotionally, these are my non-negotiables that I'm going to execute throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, that put me in a position to continuously serve.
Ooh, that's a good one too. These are some good questions. These
These
are
are the
good
MindStrong
prompts.
boys.
So, what are the things that I need to do?
Yeah.
First of all, when it comes to XPT and when it comes to prescribing and taking people through like extreme heat, extreme cold, to the depths of the pool with weights,
Yeah.
I I must be able to go far and beyond anyone that I train's capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
I must continually push myself further than I think anyone can go, because if I'm willing to take you there, then you sure as hell should be able to bring people back.
Right.
Is my thing. If I'm taking you to the bottom of the pool with weights, I need to know what it's like 3 times at that depth. I need to know all the safety that goes involved in deep water training. So for me, it's constantly um, pushing the limits of what I'm preaching. So I need to make sure and understand that if there's a question that came up to me, so say for today we came up with a question and I didn't really know the answer, I'd make sure that I knew the answer
Mm-hmm.
for the next time,
Yeah.
because it's such a it's such a fickle world these days, where every piece of information is online, but no one really dives into the context of that information. So
Right.
for me, it's like, if I get asked a question, I don't want to just give the content of the question, be like, oh, it's this because of this, because I read this. I want to be like, oh, it's this because here's the deep understanding. Here's how I felt when I did it. And here's what happened when I put people through it. So I want to have just deeper layers of information. So first and foremost, I want to be more informed of everything that I do.
Mm-hmm.
Like I said, any hobby that when I take up, I want to master it. I don't want it just to be a hobby. I want it to become a passion.
It's awesome.
So, and that comes with knowing all the information,
Right on.
knowing what the extreme levels of that is. So that's first and foremost. God, I went off on a tangent then. I've almost forgotten your question at the
No,
start.
no, you're right on, because it's just you as a human, right? You're talking about
Yeah,
and this is like the standard, the value system of you, because you're right. And I think what you guys have done, and I think this will get you back on track of it. what
Yeah.
you guys have done is we are in a situation where it's like it's a double-edged sword, because it's amazing how much you can learn. I mean, if you want to be at the level of a PhD in any situation now, you really could without going to school. You know,
Oh,
you
for
could you
sure.
could deep dive and learn as much as you want. It's still
For
going to
sure.
require the time.
Yeah.
And then what you're saying, well, yeah, now I could be the smartest person in the room or articulate what I read the most, but then if I haven't experienced it,
Yeah.
then I don't know, you know. And so
For sure.
and that comes into relatability to people and those sort of things. And that was actually when we went out to breakfast after training one of the days. I remember
That's right.
you sort of told me what your days look like. Okay, I read that, I read the research, and then I apply it. And then if we apply it and we can understand it, or I can understand it as a coach, then I'll coach it.
Yeah.
And that's kind of, you know, if you look at just your day in a blanket 24-hour day, you know, how does
Yeah.
that day look? Do you spend every day reading? Do you spend a few days? Obviously, you train all the time, but what are just the senses that, very simply, what do you have to execute so you know that you're advancing your ability to help more people?
Yeah, so that's okay. So back on track.
Yeah.
Yeah, so if I'm going to break it down to the week. So, I've set PJ and I have set kind of like a calendar for each week,
Okay.
about how much content we want to get through.
Oh,
So,
okay.
um, over the course of a month, I would make sure that I've read 2 to 4 studies,
Okay.
and I've reviewed those studies. So we'll read the study, and then we'll break that study down and write it in a language that general population can understand. So,
Mm.
you've read these scientific journal studies, and it's
Yep.
like they're just trying to flex as much of their intellect as possible
Oh
on
yeah.
paper.
Oh yeah.
So you're trying to get 10 information that's set at a 10, and then rewrite it at a 2 so that everybody can enjoy it. So,
Right.
like, what are the key takeaways from this? So for me, that's a great practice,
It's a cool way
in
of hearing it too. Yeah.
getting the information to the masses, and not just being like this scientific babble that sounds cool when you start spouting out like the physiological response of the nervous system and blah blah blah. It's like, that's great, but no one gives a shit about that,
Right.
because what does that mean? But if I can get it down to a place where it's like, oh well, the remote control of your mind is actually your breath, so if we just do a couple of breaths in and out, that's actually going to help you in these such situations.
Mm.
So my ability to kind of keep the language simple and purvey it to then whatever population I'm with. Yeah, certain populations I can increase that language a little bit, or some populations I have to decrease it if we're talking to kids. So that's one of the ones, is each week I need to dive into at least one kind of scientific literature, and break it down and rewrite it in a simple form.
Yeah.
So that helps me kind of work on that. As far as training goes, uh, I'm up at the pool like 3 to 4 times a week.
Mm-hmm.
So we're doing heat, ice, and pool training, and it's always evolving. For me, I just constantly make sure that I understand what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're doing a new movement, I just need to know, why are we doing this, and how could I dose this, or how could I, put this into some kind of programming, or what category would I put this in? Performance, and if it is performance, is it more of a metabolic capacity or mental trait, like what? So I'm constantly thinking about things. It's just the nature of my brain. And then as I move through the week, I want to get my son outside into nature.
Yep.
And I like to get into nature, so sometimes I actually go and just go for a ride or a hike for myself to kind of reconnect.
Yeah. Reset. Yeah.
Reset. I bring my son with me, or my dog. I mean, if I bring my son with me, that's not really resetting. That's stress, dealing with stress,
For
because
sure.
he likes to climb and run away from me.
You're just
So
on
that's
high
cool.
sympathetic alert. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Danger zone. There's like
Eyes on the
mine.
kid. Eyes on the kid. Eyes on the kid. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, eyes on target. Eyes on
Yep.
target. So, there's just, I guess, like I try and practice what I preach as
Yeah.
much as I can. Obviously, there's some weeks where I do not, because life.
Yeah.
But for the most part, I try and read up on what we're talking about. I try and train harder than I prescribe,
Mm-hmm.
and I try and spend more time with myself than most people should.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
No, I
so
love that.
that's
Yeah.
kind of my reason. And that in turn helps me be more empathetic to everyone that I coach.
Yeah, no, I think you've stayed super consistent on those in so many different angles, and you always kind of come back to that, which is really cool to listen to you speak. And that's where now we'll finish with our last sort of our last question of what we always like asking people, asking ourselves. You know, obviously we want to be in the moment and be present at all times, and practice that, right? And a lot of
Yeah.
these things help you do it. I mean, heat, ice, nature, breath practice, that will all increase your ability to sustain yourself and understand your moment, and obviously decrease stress and be able to control it or help it at least. And so, but
Yeah.
but also there's always something that kind of excites you as you move forward, right? Which is the vision aspect of it. And so from yourself looking into the future of what does excite you and what does make you want to understand science literature and help more people understand it, or physical training or your own capabilities, you know, you have all
Yeah.
these things that you're always evolving. What
Yeah.
is that thing that you've always seen out in front that you really visualize, imagine, and kind of see yourself trying to give to more people, or for yourself or your family? What is that vision ahead of you?
So I mean, it really is turned somewhat to my family, to my son.
Uh huh.
I guess that one thing is just helping provide a environment and a platform for him to be able to deal with stress and to perform um, in the most holistic way.
Nice.
I guess that's the one thing that really drives me. But conversely, I don't want to be so preachy about it. I want it to be natural for him.
Yeah.
So I don't want to, you know what I mean? I don't want
Yeah,
to
I do.
force it upon him. So when I start to think about that, we start to think about how children develop. It's like, well, he's only going to replicate what he sees.
Right.
So that's the biggest driver for me, is to allow my son to be with me while I'm doing all these trainings that I want him to do. So
Super
you know,
cool.
you know what I mean? So I
Yeah.
want him to come to the pool. So I get him in the pool. We'll get him in the heat. You know, Laird likes to dip his feet in the ice. It's funny, but it's also like, well, this is actually kind of cool because he's been exposed to it. And I just want to continually expose my son to that. And for
Wow.
me to do that, I need to really focus on myself as far as like continuing this journey. So for me, it's my son, and I kind of I skirt around and circle back to this, but trying to, how do I articulate this? Trying to get him to kind of fall into that performance XPT lifestyle
Yeah.
without telling him that he has to do it, or this is, I don't want to be the preachy dad or the preachy coach dad, like, oh, you got to do, 5 ice baths before you can go to school.
Right.
No, I want him just to grow up with it, so it's just natural for him to be more aware of self, more, you know, adaptable to stress and heat and stuff like that. So that's the biggest push for me, is creating an atmosphere for my son to be that way inclined. And he's only 2.5, so I've got a long time to go. But
He's got a ways to go.
that's long term. That's long term investment for me to
Yeah.
stay on this path. So
That is amazing stuff, man.
yeah,
Mark, again, as always, dude, it is just fun to talk to you
yeah, I really enjoyed it.
yeah, and hear from you. And you guys, again, check these guys out, check you out, and we'll do our best to share XPT with people through these platforms and some of the things that you're doing in training. But I think more importantly, as I really break it down, I think
Yeah,
it's so valuable what you're saying just for humans in general, right? And
yeah,
we could all sort of advance ourselves and use nature, use these techniques that are ancient and modern, and then building community, putting people around you, inspiring, and your children and those sort of things. And you've been like that since the moment I met you, and it's been a really
yeah,
cool thing. And you've given me and myself you've given myself, Brian, and MindStrong a lot of your time. So I think
yeah. No,
something I
I
try to
appreciate it.
tell people a lot about this is that's your highest currency, right? So anytime I'm on a
Yeah,
podcast and I get to speak to people like yourself, it's just really cool to get your time and to give that away to us. And I can't wait for people to hear this because you nailed it. You articulate things extremely well, and you've trained and helped them a lot of people. I don't even know, so I'm not going to throw an educated guess out there, but
Yes.
keep doing what you're
Yeah.
doing, man. And obviously, I look forward to seeing you again and training with you. And best of luck to you and your family. But this was a lot of fun. I appreciate the time.
I really appreciate your time too, and I appreciate you guys and your conversations and your thought-provoking content because it's you only have a second to grab people's attention
Right.
on any given platform, and I think you guys are doing such a great job with just creating conversation,
Yeah.
starting conversations, and starting that kind of that idea that it's not all about performance. It's there's other sides to it. So we appreciate your continued involvement in what it is we're all trying to do, become better humans. So I appreciate your conversations a lot.
Absolutely, Mark. Likewise, brother.
Yeah,
I will. Hey, I'll talk to you soon. Enjoy the
yeah, you
rest of your
will.
day out, and
You will.
tell the crew we said hello. And
I will.
we will talk to you guys soon.
Appreciate you.
All right. Cheers, brother.
Cheers. Bye.
See you.